Hello, I'm Michael Wybrow, and in this short video I'm going to talk to you about how we can work with separate contexts for SwiftData, in particular SwiftUI views. So by default, when we're working with SwiftData, it gives us access to a single model context, and this is the place that we create and edit and delete SwiftData model objects, and it's used by the UI, and any changes that we make there are reflected in our SwiftUI views when we use things like queries. However, SwiftData does allow us to create additional contexts that are attached to the same container, that is the same database or storage. For the purpose of this video, we're going to call this an edit context, but Apple just calls them additional contexts. And the thing to understand about these edit contexts is that when we edit or add or delete objects to them, those changes only affect that context, and the main context that's used by the rest of the app won't be affected. So this is a great place to make changes where you're, say, editing an object in a SwiftUI view, and you want to have controls on that edit form or sheet that make changes to the object, but you don't want those changes to be made to that object in the rest of the app until the user confirms them. So this allows us to make these changes and then only have them affect the rest of the app when we want to. This is also a way that we can do background processing on our database, like importing a large amount of objects and not causing the main thread to get tied up with this, and hence potentially cause our app to crash because it becomes unresponsive. So how do we go about creating an edit context? Let's say that we are in a SwiftUI view and we have the environment property that is listed here, where we're using the standard model context from the entire app. We can create an additional model context, and we do this by giving the container, the SwiftData container that's used by the rest of the app. And then here I've got the line autosave enabled is false. The main context for SwiftData has autosaved enabled, so when the app gets backgrounded or quit, your context gets saved automatically. But you also have control over when you save it. For these additional contexts, the default is that they don't have autosave enabled, so you could actually omit this line, but this is just to give you the idea that that's what's happening and you're responsible for saving it. Now, when you've got one of these edit contexts, you can pass that via the model context modifier to any SwiftUI view, and that SwiftUI view will see that context instead of the main one as its model context. So why is that useful? Because inside that particular SwiftUI view where we've used this model context modifier, when you use the model context property, like we did with the environment property here, or when you use an @query annotation on one of your properties, then that will use the edit context. Now the edit context initially will see and have all of the same data as the main context, but any changes you make to it, either additions, modifications, deletions, will only be in that edit context until you save it. But the useful thing here is the UI inside of this SwiftUI view that has this overridden model context will reflect the state in that edit context. And then when you want to save those changes because the user has decided they want them to be persisted, then you can call the save method of the model context And then typically you'd also dismiss the editing or the creating view that you're building. Or if you want to discard those changes, you can just call rollback if you're going to keep using the context, or if the context only existed for this view, you can also just discard it. And if you don't call save and the view is freed, then the changes in the model context, in the edit context, just go away. We're saying model context here because the model context within our create hero view is the edit context. One thing that you need to be aware of in this case is that when you have model instances, so things you've fetched from SwiftData, they belong to a particular context. So if you've, say, used a query to get a list of hero objects on your main context, and then you want to pass that to an editing view where you can edit the details of one of those heroes, and you're doing that in an edit context, you need to fetch a version of that from the edit context. And how we do this is every SwiftData object has a persistent model ID. So we can imagine that if we wanted to have a list of heroes that we'd fetched from SwiftData, and we tapped on one of them to edit it, we could get that hero's persistent model ID. We would pass that to the edit hero view. We would also set a model context equal to one of these new edit contexts. And then inside our editing view, we can ask the edit context to fetch a copy of that object. And we do that by giving the hero ID. Okay, thanks for watching.